The silk sheets were too soft. That was the first thing Imani noticed as consciousness clawed its way back to her. The fabric sliding against her skin like water, nothing like the worn cotton of her dorm bed. Her eyelids felt weighted. Her mouth tasted like copper and something bitter she couldn't name. She forced her eyes open. Crystal chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings painted in cream and gold. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a sprawling view of Seoul's skyline, the morning sun turning glass towers into pillars of fire. The room was enormous, bigger than her entire apartment back home, decorated in minimalist luxury that screamed money she'd never seen in her life. Imani's heart slammed against her ribs. She threw the covers back and stumbled out of bed, her legs shaking. She was wearing clothes she didn't recognize. An expensive silk nightgown in deep emerald that definitely wasn't hers. Panic crawled up her throat as she patted herself down, searching for injuries, for evidence of. Her fingers brushed against paper on the nightstand. The document was thick, official, printed on heavy cardstock with embossed lettering in Korean and English. Her vision blurred as she scanned the words, certain she was still dreaming, caught in some nightmare her exhausted brain had conjured up during finals week. Certificate of marriage. Parties. Imani Reese and Han Joon-Seok. Date: April 15, 2025. Her signature sprawled across the bottom in her own handwriting, messy, looping, unmistakably hers. But she didn't remember signing it. Didn't remember writing her name. Didn't remember. No. No, 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 no. The words tumbled out as she spun in circles, searching for her phone, her wallet, her passport, her backpack, anything familiar. The room was pristine, untouched except for a small suitcase in the corner that she didn't recognize but somehow contained her clothes, neatly folded. Imani ran to the door and yanked it open. A man stood in the hallway, tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black suit with an earpiece curled around his ear. He didn't move, didn't even blink, just stared straight ahead like she was invisible. "Excuse me," Imani said, her voice cracking. I need to leave. There's been a mistake." Nothing. Not even a flicker of acknowledgement. She stepped forward. The man's hand moved to his jacket. Not threatening, just ready. And Imani's survival instincts screamed at her to stop. She'd grown up in rough neighborhoods, knew the language of violence, and this man wore it like a second skin. "Please." Her voice dropped to something desperate. "I don't know how I got here. I just want to go home." Footsteps echoed down the hallway, measured, unhurried, the sound of expensive leather against marble. Imani's breath caught as a figure emerged from the shadows. Han Joon-Seok looked exactly like the demons her foster mother used to warn her about. He was tall, over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that filled out his black suit like it had been tailored to his body, which it probably had been. His face was all sharp angles and cold beauty, the kind of handsome that felt dangerous, with dark eyes that revealed absolutely nothing. His black hair was styled back from his face, showing the gray threading through at his temples. He moved with the quiet confidence of a predator that had never known fear. He stopped 3 feet away from her, hands in his pockets, and studied her with the same expression someone might use to examine a piece of furniture. "You're awake." His voice was deep, accented, perfectly controlled. Not a question, a statement of fact. Imani held up the marriage certificate with shaking hands. "What the hell is this? A legal document." He glanced at the paper like it bored him. "Signed by you, witnessed by appropriate parties, binding in both Korean and American law." "I didn't sign this. I would never." She stopped, memories flickering like a corrupted video file. Her foster mother, Mrs. Patterson, setting down a cup of tea. "Drink up, baby. We're celebrating your last semester." The room tilting, her hand moving across paper while her brain screamed that something was wrong. "She drugged me." Joon-Seok's expression didn't change. "Your foster mother made a business arrangement. Her son owed a debt he couldn't pay. You were the payment." The words hit her like a physical blow. Imani stumbled back against the doorframe, the marriage certificate crumpling in her fist. "No, she wouldn't. Damon's my brother." She's my mother. She raised me. She sold you. He said it with the same inflection someone might use to comment on the weather. Took the money and disappeared, along with her son. We checked. Their apartment is empty. Numbers disconnected. The floor seemed to drop out from under her. Imani's knees buckled, and she slid down the doorframe until she was sitting on the cold marble, the silk nightgown pooling around her. Her mind raced through memories, searching for signs she'd missed. Mrs. Patterson's sudden interest in teaching her Korean. The way she'd isolated Imani from friends. The constant reminders that family takes care of family. She'd been groomed, prepared like livestock for sale. I want to call the police. Imani's voice came out hollow. This is human trafficking. Kidnapping. I'm a U.S. citizen. They can't. They won't help you. Joon-Seok crouched down so they were eye level, and Imani got her first real look at his face. There was no cruelty there, no satisfaction. Just emptiness. I own half the police in this city. The other half know better than to interfere with my business. You can try to run. You won't make it past the front gate. You can try to fight. You'll lose. He paused. Or you can accept your situation and make the best of it. Make the best of it? Imani's voice rose to something sharp and dangerous. You bought me like I'm property and you want me to just, what? Playhouse? Pretend this is normal. I want you to survive. He stood, brushing invisible dust from his pants. This is your reality now. Adapt or suffer. The choice is yours. He turned to walk away, and something inside Imani snapped. She surged to her feet and grabbed his arm, just trying to make him see her, acknowledge that she was a person, not a thing he'd acquired. Joon-Seok moved faster than she could track. One moment she was touching him, the next her wrist was caught in an iron grip. Her body spun and pressed against the wall with her arm twisted behind her back. Not hard enough to hurt, but firm enough that she couldn't move. His breath was hot against her ear. Don't touch me. Imani's heart hammered so hard she thought it might burst. But she'd grown up fighting. Learned early that showing fear was the same as bleeding in shark-infested waters. She turned her head, met his eyes, and spoke through gritted teeth. My name is Imani Reese. I'm 19 years old. I'm 3 weeks away from graduating college with a degree in social work. I have dreams. I have plans. I am not your property, and I am not going to disappear just because you want me to. For just a second, so brief she almost missed it, something flickered in Joon-Seok's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. Then it was gone, replaced by that same cold emptiness. He released her and stepped back. Breakfast is at 8. Someone will bring you appropriate clothes. Learn the rules quickly, Imani Reese. He said her name like he was testing how it felt in his mouth. In this house, defiance is expensive. He walked away, the guard falling into step behind him, leaving Imani alone in the hallway with a crumpled marriage certificate and the dawning realization that her life as she knew it was over. She slid back down the wall, wrapped her arms around her knees, and finally, let herself cry. 3 days passed like a prison sentence. Imani learned the layout of her cage quickly, not because she accepted it, but because she needed to know every possible exit. The mansion sprawled across 3 floors, all marble and glass and cold beauty that felt more like a mausoleum than a home. Guards stationed at every exit. Cameras in every hallway. Her room had a lock, but only on the outside. She'd tested the windows on the first night. Bulletproof glass. 40-foot drop to manicured gardens patrolled by men with guns. Her phone was gone. Her laptop confiscated. The only technology in her room was a television that only played Korean channels she couldn't understand. It was sensory deprivation disguised as luxury, and Imani felt herself fraying at the edges. On the morning of the 4th day, a woman appeared at her door. She was older, maybe 60, with silver hair pulled into a tight bun and eyes that had seen too much to be surprised by anything. She carried a garment bag and moved with the efficient grace of someone who'd spent a lifetime serving powerful people. I am Miss Kwan, she said in careful English. I manage the household. You will dress now. Breakfast with Mr. Han is mandatory. Imani sat on the bed in the same jeans and Howard University sweatshirt she'd been wearing for 3 days, her hair wild around her face. "I'm not hungry." That was not a request. Miss Kwan laid the garment bag on the bed and unzipped it, revealing a dress, simple, elegant, cream-colored. "Expensive. You have 10 minutes. And if I refuse?" Miss Kwan's expression didn't change. "Then you will be dressed and taken downstairs regardless. I recommend you maintain your dignity." The threat was clear. Imani's jaw clenched, but she took the dress. Small battles, she reminded herself. Save your strength for the war. The dining room was obscenely large. A table that could seat 20, set for 2 at opposite ends like they were strangers forced to share an airport lounge. Joon-Seok sat at the head, reading something on a tablet, his breakfast untouched. He wore a different suit, charcoal gray this time, but the same expression of complete disinterest. He didn't look up when she entered. Imani took the seat at the opposite end, the distance between them a football field of polished wood. A staff member appeared immediately, setting down plates of food she didn't recognize: rice, soup, grilled fish, banchan in small dishes. Her stomach growled despite herself. She hadn't eaten since waking up here. She picked up the chopsticks, fumbled with them for a moment, then stabbed the fish with a fork that appeared beside her plate. A small act of rebellion. "You attended Howard University." Joon-Seok's voice cut through the silence without warning. He still hadn't looked up from his tablet. Imani froze, fork halfway to her mouth. "How do you?" "I know everything about you, Imani Reese." He swiped across the screen. "Born in Chicago. Parents died when you were 8. Car accident on the interstate. Entered foster care. Placed with Patricia Patterson and her son Damon 6 months later. Moved to Philadelphia. Worked 3 jobs through high school. Full scholarship to Howard. Social work major. 3.7 GPA. Thesis on systemic barriers in child welfare services." He finally looked up, his dark eyes meeting hers across the vast table. "You were supposed to graduate in 3 weeks. The past tense gutted her. Imani set down her fork, her appetite gone. Your professors have been notified of a family emergency requiring you to withdraw. Your scholarship has been terminated. Your apartment lease was broken. Your belongings are in storage. You had no right. I had every right. You're my wife." He said it like he was stating a mathematical fact. "Your old life is gone. The sooner you accept that, the better." Imani pushed back from the table, the chair screeching against marble. "I will never accept this. I will find a way out. I will. Sit down." It wasn't a yell. He didn't raise his voice at all. But something in the command made every survival instinct in Imani's body scream danger. She'd heard that tone before in the group homes, from men who hurt people without hesitation. She remained standing, knees locked, fists clenched at her sides. Joon-Seok set down his tablet with deliberate care. "You have spirit. That's admirable. But spirit without intelligence is just noise." He stood, and even across the distance, his presence filled the room. "You want to fight me? Fine. But understand what you're fighting. I built this empire from nothing. I have eliminated rivals, survived assassination attempts, watched enemies beg for mercy I didn't give. You are 19 years old with no money, no connections, no power." He moved around the table, each step measured. "In this house, you have 3 choices. Comply and be comfortable. Resist and suffer consequences. Or," he stopped 10 feet away, maintaining distance. "Learn to navigate the space between." "There is no space between prisoner and free," Imani shot back. "No." Something almost like respect flickered across his face. "But there's space between broken and intact." The words hung in the air between them. Imani's chest heaved, adrenaline and rage and helplessness warring inside her. She wanted to scream, to throw things, to make him feel even a fraction of the violation she felt. Instead, she lifted her chin and met his eyes. "I need my laptop." Joon-Seok's eyebrow raised slightly. "Why?" "Because I'm 3 weeks from graduating and 4 years of work shouldn't disappear because you bought me like furniture." Her voice shook but held. My professors said family emergency. Fine. Let me finish remotely. Let me have that one thing. He studied her for a long moment, and Imani couldn't read anything in his expression. Then he pulled out his phone, typed something, and pocketed it again. Your laptop will be returned this afternoon. Internet access will be monitored. Any attempt to contact authorities or reach out for help will result in immediate revocation of privileges. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Imani? I don't negotiate twice. He left her standing in the dining room, surrounded by cold food and colder luxury. That afternoon, Miss Kwan delivered her laptop, her actual laptop, with her stickers and scratches and the cracked corner from when she dropped it last semester. Imani clutched it to her chest like a lifeline and cried for the first time since that initial breakdown. It wasn't freedom. It was barely even a concession. But it was hers. She logged into her school portal that night, fighting back tears as she read emails from concerned professors and friends asking if she was okay. She couldn't respond honestly. Couldn't tell them she'd been sold, trafficked, trapped. The cursor blinked in empty reply boxes while Imani's mind screamed everything she couldn't say. Finally, she typed, family emergency. I'm safe. Will complete coursework remotely. Thank you for your patience. 3 lies in 3 sentences. The next week fell into a suffocating rhythm. Breakfast at 8 with Joon-Seok. Silent except for the sound of silverware against porcelain. He read reports. She plotted escape routes in her head. Then he would disappear into his office or leave the mansion entirely, and Imani would retreat to her room to work on her thesis and pretend she had any control over her life. She learned the guards' names by observing shift changes. Learned which staff members would meet her eyes and which ones pretended she was invisible. Learned that Joon-Seok returned late most nights, always alone, and sometimes she heard him pacing in his room across the hall. She learned he never slept more than 4 hours. On the 8th night, Imani woke to screaming. Not hers. Someone else's, raw and agonized, coming from somewhere in the house. She bolted upright, her heart in her throat, every horror movie she'd ever seen flooding her imagination. Then she recognized the voice. Joon-Seok. Imani's hand hovered over her doorknob. Every rational part of her brain said to stay inside, lock the door, pretend she heard nothing. This man was her captor, her jailer. She owed him nothing, least of all comfort. But the sound, God, the sound. It wasn't the scream of a monster. It was the scream of someone trapped in hell, reliving it over and over. She opened her door. The hallway was dark, empty of guards for once. Joon-Seok's room was across from hers, the door slightly ajar. Through the gap, she could see him thrashing in bed, sheets tangled around him, his face contorted in anguish. No, no, please. Korean words she didn't understand. Then, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Imani pushed the door open wider. His room was as sparse as hers was luxurious. A bed, a desk, nothing personal except a photograph on the nightstand that she couldn't see clearly in the darkness. Joon-Seok was trapped in his nightmare, his body rigid, sweat soaking through his shirt. Mr. Han, Imani whispered, staying near the door. You're dreaming. You need to. His eyes snapped open. For a moment he didn't see her. He saw something else, someone else, and the grief on his face was so raw it physically hurt to witness. Then recognition filtered in, and his expression shuddered like a door slamming closed. Get out. His voice was wrecked, barely human. You were screaming. I said get out. Imani fled, pulling his door closed behind her. She stood in the hallway, her heart pounding, until she heard movement inside. Footsteps, water running. The sound of someone trying to wash away memories that couldn't be cleaned. She went back to her room but didn't sleep. The next morning at breakfast, Joon-Seok looked exhausted. His suit was impeccable as always, his expression perfectly controlled, but shadows lived under his eyes that hadn't been there before. They ate in silence for 10 minutes. Then Imani spoke. I lost my parents when I was 8. Joon-Seok's fork paused halfway to his mouth. Car accident. Interstate 90. Drunk driver crossed the median. She kept her eyes on her plate, pushing rice around. I was in the back seat. Walked away with cuts and bruises. They died at the scene. She finally looked up. I still hear the sound of the impact sometimes. In my dreams. The way metal screams when it tears. Joon-Seok set down his fork with careful precision. His jaw was tight, and something dangerous flickered in his eyes. Not anger, but warning. Don't. Imani held his gaze. I know what that kind of nightmare sounds like. What it feels like to wake up and still be trapped in the moment you lost everything. You know nothing. Each word was ice. About me. About loss. About. Then tell me I'm wrong. She leaned forward. Tell me you weren't dreaming about someone you loved. Someone you lost. Tell me that pain in your voice was fake. He stood so abruptly his chair fell backward, the crash echoing through the dining room like a gunshot. For a moment, Imani thought he might actually hurt her. His hands were clenched into fists, his breathing ragged, his control fraying at the edges. Instead, he walked out without a word. But that afternoon, when Imani returned to her room after working on her thesis in the library, she found something on her bed that hadn't been there before. A photograph. Old, creased at the edges, showing a younger Joon-Seok with laugh lines around his eyes she'd never seen in person. He held a little girl, maybe 5 years old, on his shoulders, her face lit up with pure joy. Beside them stood a woman, beautiful and warm, her hand on Joon-Seok's arm, her smile so genuine it hurt to look at. On the back, written in Hangul she couldn't read and English underneath. My heart. My life. Forever. Imani picked up the photograph with trembling hands and understood. The man who bought her was already dead inside. He'd just forgotten to stop breathing. What would you do in Imani's position? Could you forgive someone who imprisoned you, even if you learned they were broken too? Drop a comment and let me know where you are watching from and what time it is over there. I love seeing how far our global community reaches. Imani kept the photograph. She knew she should return it. It wasn't hers, wasn't meant for her, was probably the most private thing Joon-Seok owned. But she tucked it into her thesis binder anyway, between pages about systemic failures and broken families, and told herself it was research. Understanding your captor was survival strategy 101. That's what she told herself. The truth was Messier. The truth was that she'd looked at that photo for an hour, studying the joy on his face, trying to reconcile that man with the one who'd bought her like property. The truth was that her anger hadn't disappeared, but it had complicated. 2 weeks crawled by. Joon-Seok never mentioned the photograph. Never acknowledged that he'd left it for her or that she'd kept it. Their breakfasts continued in loaded silence, both of them carrying wounds they refused to show. But things shifted in small ways. He stopped leaving the room when she entered. Started asking about her thesis, clipped, perfunctory questions that she answered with equal brevity. She learned he spoke 4 languages fluently. He learned she'd been studying Korean in secret for 6 months before Mrs. Patterson drugged her, trying to connect with a heritage that wasn't even hers. Why Korean? He asked one morning, surprising her. Imani looked up from her laptop. They'd fallen into a pattern where she worked at one end of the dining table during breakfast while he handled business at the other. Separate but occupying the same space. Why does it matter? It doesn't. He returned to his tablet. I'm simply curious why you'd learn a language with no connection to your background. Maybe I wanted to understand a culture different from mine. Maybe I was tired of only knowing one way of seeing the world. She closed her laptop. Or maybe I just liked the way it sounded. Does there have to be a reason? Joon-Seok studied her with that unreadable expression. Most people don't do things without reason. Most people don't buy wives either, but here we are. His jaw tightened, but he didn't take the bait. Instead, he pulled out his phone and typed something. 30 seconds later, Miss Kwan appeared in the doorway. Sir, arrange for a Korean tutor. Someone discreet. He didn't look at Imani. 3 times a week. That's not necessary. Imani started. You want to finish your degree. Fine. But you live in Korea now. You'll learn to navigate it properly. He stood, straightening his cufflinks with mechanical precision. Unless you'd prefer to remain dependent on translators and guards for every interaction. He left before she could argue, and Imani sat there feeling something she hated. Grateful. The tutor arrived 2 days later, a young woman named Professor Yoon who looked barely older than Imani herself, with bright eyes and a warm smile that felt like sunshine after weeks of cold marble and colder stares. "Your Korean is already quite good," Professor Yoon said in English after their first session, genuine surprise in her voice. "Your pronunciation needs work, but your vocabulary is advanced. You've been studying for a while." "About 7 months. Imani traced patterns on the textbook cover. "Though I'm learning, it wasn't exactly my choice." Professor Yoon's smile faltered slightly, and Imani realized she'd said too much, but the woman simply gathered her materials and bowed. "Language is freedom, Miss Reese. No matter why you started learning, it becomes yours once you speak it." After she left, Imani repeated those words to herself like a mantra. Language is freedom. She threw herself into studying with the same intensity she'd brought to her degree. Korean in the mornings with Professor Yoon. Thesis work in the afternoons. At night, she'd watch Korean dramas with subtitles, pausing to practice pronunciation until the words felt natural in her mouth. Joon-Seok noticed. She caught him watching her sometimes, that same unreadable expression on his face when she stumbled through a conversation with Miss Kwon in broken Korean. He never commented, never corrected her, just observed like she was a puzzle he was trying to solve. 3 weeks into her captivity, everything changed. Imani was in the library, a room she'd claimed as her sanctuary, all floor-to-ceiling books and leather chairs and windows overlooking gardens she wasn't allowed to walk in. When raised voices echoed from Joon-Seok's office down the hall, she shouldn't have listened, should have closed the library door and focused on her work. But the voices were angry, escalating, and one of them was Joon-Seok's. Not cold and controlled, but actually heated. She'd never heard him lose composure. Imani crept to the library door and cracked it open. "Cannot be serious." A man's voice, speaking Korean. "She's a liability. A foreign girl with no understanding of our world. No loyalty. No. Enough." Joon-Seok, sharp as a blade. "The arrangement is made. The contract is signed." "A contract you were pressured into by the council." Another voice, older. "They want you neutralized, Joon-Seok. A wife, an heir, they're boxing you in, making you predictable. Weak. I'm aware of the politics." "Then send her back. Annul it. Claim she's unsuitable. You don't need." The sound of something heavy hitting a desk made Imani flinch. When Joon-Seok spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet. "I don't explain my decisions to anyone. Not the council. Not you. The girl stays." "Why?" The older voice again, frustrated. "She means nothing to you. She's a stranger. Why protect a pawn you didn't even want?" Silence stretched so long Imani thought maybe they'd stop talking. Then, "Because everyone else in my life is already dead." The words hit like a physical blow. Imani's hand covered her mouth, her eyes stinging. "I'm leaving," the first man said. "But this isn't over. The council will push harder. They'll use her against you. Let them try." Footsteps approached the office door. Imani fled back to her chair, grabbing her laptop like she'd been working the entire time. 2 men in expensive suits passed the library without looking in, their faces hard and angry. Imani's hands shook on the keyboard. "Because everyone else in my life is already dead." That night she couldn't sleep, couldn't stop replaying those words, that raw admission she wasn't supposed to hear. She paced her room until midnight, then gave up and slipped into the hallway. The house was quieter at night. Guards at their posts but fewer staff moving around. Imani made her way to the kitchen, hoping tea might settle her restless mind. She wasn't expecting to find Joon-Seok there. He stood at the counter in a black t-shirt and sleep pants, the most casual she'd ever seen him, pouring whiskey into a crystal glass. His hair was unstyled, falling across his forehead, and the exhaustion on his face made him look older than 39. He stiffened when he noticed her but didn't tell her to leave. "Can't sleep." His voice was rough, tired. No. Imani moved to the opposite counter, maintaining distance. I don't sleep much. He took a drink, the motion mechanical. For hours if I'm lucky. 2 most nights. Nightmares? His eyes cut to her, sharp and warning. You ask too many questions. You gave me a photograph of your dead family. I think that opened the door for questions. Joon-Seok's grip tightened on the glass, and for a moment Imani thought she'd pushed too far. Then his shoulders sagged slightly, barely noticeable, but she'd learned to read his micro-expressions. Her name was Hygiene, he said quietly. My wife, and our daughter was Somin. She would have been 23 this year. Imani's chest constricted, the same age as her. How did they? She stopped. I'm sorry. You don't have to. Rival gang. 15 years ago. They came for me, but I wasn't home. He stared into his whiskey like it held answers. I was at a meeting, choosing business over family dinner because the meeting was important. The word dripped with venom. They tortured Hygiene for information she didn't have. Killed Somin because she tried to fight back with a kitchen knife. She was 6 years old. Imani's hand flew to her mouth, tears burning her eyes. I found them when I got home, held my daughter while she died, watched my wife bleed out. His voice never wavered, perfectly controlled, like he was reciting facts from a report. I killed every person involved. Not quickly, not mercifully, and it changed nothing. They were still gone. I'm so sorry, Imani whispered. Don't be. He finally looked at her, and his eyes were empty. I chose this life. I chose violence and power over safety and peace. They paid the price for my choices. He drained the whiskey. That's why I don't let anyone close. That's why I don't feel. Because feeling means remembering, and remembering means accepting that I killed them with my selfishness. Imani moved without thinking, crossing the kitchen until she stood a few feet away from him. He tensed, his body language screaming warning, but she didn't touch him. You didn't kill them, she said firmly. Monsters killed them. You were just trying to provide for your family. By becoming a monster myself. Maybe, she held his gaze. But monsters don't have nightmares. Monsters don't keep photographs. Monsters don't look at a girl they bought and see a person worth protecting. I'm not protecting you. But his voice lacked conviction. You gave me my laptop back so I could graduate. You hired a tutor so I wouldn't feel trapped by language. You stood up to your counsel to keep me here instead of sending me back to be sold to someone worse. Imani's voice cracked. You may have bought me, Han Joon-Seok, but you're trying not to break me. That's not what monsters do. He stared at her for a long moment, and something shifted in his expression. The ice cracking just slightly, revealing the drowning man underneath. I heard you, Imani admitted. This afternoon, talking to those men. You said everyone else in your life is already dead. Joon-Seok's jaw clenched. You shouldn't eavesdrop. Probably not. But I did. And now I understand. She took a breath. You're not keeping me here because you want a wife or because you care about some contract. You're keeping me here because I'm still alive, and you're tired of being surrounded by ghosts. His hand tightened on the counter, knuckles white. You should go back to your room. Why? Because I'm getting too close to the truth? Because it's easier to keep me at a distance than admit you're human. I'm not human. The words exploded out of him, the first real emotion she'd heard. I stopped being human the night I chose wrong. The night I let them die. I'm just existing, going through motions, building an empire over their graves because it's the only thing I know how to do. Imani's tears spilled over. That's the saddest thing I've ever heard. It's the truth. It's a choice. She stepped closer, watching him tense. You're choosing to stay dead with them instead of honoring them by living. You're choosing to be empty instead of full. And you're so scared of losing someone again that you've convinced yourself you're incapable of caring. I am incapable. Then why do you pace outside my door when I have nightmares? The question hung in the air. Why do you make sure Miss Kwan adds American food to breakfast even though you don't eat it? Why did you threaten your own counsel for a girl who means nothing to you? Joon-Seok's breathing was labored, his control fracturing. Stop. You're not dead, Joon-Seok. You're just scared. Imani's voice softened. And I get it. I do. I've been scared since I woke up here. Scared of you. Scared of this life. Scared that I'll disappear completely. But I'm starting to think. She paused. Maybe we're both just scared of the same thing. Being alive and losing again. He turned away from her, gripping the counter like it was the only thing keeping him upright. His shoulders shook once, just once, and Imani realized with stunned clarity that Han Joon-Seok, the feared Mafia boss who'd built an empire on violence and control, was on the verge of breaking. I can't, he whispered. I can't let anyone in. I can't survive losing someone again. Then don't let me in. Imani kept her distance, respecting the boundary he needed. But stop pretending I'm not here. Stop pretending we're not both trapped in this house together. Both carrying ghosts, both just trying to survive. He didn't respond, didn't turn around. But his breathing slowly steadied, the moment passing. Finally, he spoke without looking at her. You should finish your thesis. Graduation is in 3 weeks. It was a dismissal, but gentler than before. Imani nodded even though he couldn't see her. Good night, Joon-Seok. She was halfway out of the kitchen when his voice stopped her. Imani. She turned. He still faced away from her, but his voice was different. Not cold, not empty, just tired. Thank you for talking, even though I didn't want to hear it. You're welcome. She left him there in the kitchen, surrounded by expensive whiskey and expensive emptiness, and went back to her room. But something had changed. Some wall had cracked, and neither of them could pretend anymore that they were just captor and captive. They were two broken people, learning to exist in the same space without cutting each other on their sharp edges. It wasn't forgiveness. It wasn't even friendship. But it was something. And for the first time since waking up in this nightmare, Imani felt a spark of hope that maybe, just maybe, she could survive this intact. The kitchen conversation changed everything and nothing. Joon-Seok still disappeared for hours, still conducted business behind closed doors, still maintained his cold demeanor in front of his men. But when it was just them, in the quiet moments between obligations, the ice thawed by degrees. He asked about her thesis. Actually asked, not just made perfunctory small talk. She told him about systemic failures in child welfare, about kids who fell through cracks because no one was looking closely enough. He listened with an intensity that made her uncomfortable and comforted all at once. You want to fix a broken system, he said one morning, setting down his coffee. That's ambitious. Someone has to try. Imani highlighted a passage in her research. Just because something's always been broken doesn't mean it has to stay that way. His eyes lingered on her face. Is that what you think about us? The question caught her off guard. Us. This situation. This arrangement. He gestured vaguely between them. Do you think it can be fixed? Or is it too broken? Imani closed her laptop slowly, choosing her words carefully. I think calling it broken implies it was whole to begin with. You bought me. That's not a relationship. It's ownership. But she met his eyes. I also think people are more complicated than their worst decisions. Diplomatic answer. Honest answer. She leaned back. You want me to say I've forgiven you? I haven't. You want me to say I understand why you did this? I don't. But I'm starting to understand you, and that's different. Joon-Seok studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. A gesture of respect she hadn't expected. Fair enough. 3 days before her thesis defense, which she'd be presenting via video conference because she was still a prisoner in a gilded cage, everything fell apart. Imani was in the library, rehearsing her presentation, when shouting erupted from the front of the mansion. Not the controlled discussions she'd overheard before, but actual chaos. Men yelling, something crashing, an alarm blaring. She ran to the window and her blood froze. 6 black SUVs blocked the driveway. Men in tactical gear poured out, armed with automatic weapons. One of Joon-Seok's guards went down, blood blooming across his chest. Oh God! Imani breathed. The library door slammed open. Joon-Seok stood there, gun in hand, his expression colder than she'd ever seen. Behind him, 2 guards flanked the entrance. "We need to move. Now." "What's happening?" "Now, Imani." He grabbed her arm, the first time he'd deliberately touched her since that night in the kitchen, and pulled her into the hallway. "Lee, take her to the safe room. Protocol 7. Sir, you need to come with us. I'll hold them off. Go." Gunfire erupted from the main floor. Imani's ears rang as Joon-Seok shoved her toward the guard named Lee. "Keep her alive. That's your only job." "Wait." Imani tried to turn back, and she didn't know why, didn't understand the terror flooding her system at the thought of him staying behind. "You can't just. I've been doing this for 20 years. His eyes met hers, and for just a second, that cold mask slipped. "I'll be fine. You won't be if you don't move." Lee dragged her down a hidden stairwell she hadn't known existed, through a reinforced door, into a windowless room lined with supplies and weapons. He locked them in, then positioned himself at the door with his gun drawn. "What's Protocol 7? Imani's voice shook. "Rival gang. They're hitting us while boss is vulnerable." Lee's knuckles were white on his weapon. "Someone leaked information about you. They think taking Mr. Han's wife will give them leverage." "I'm not his wife. Not really. Doesn't matter what you think. Matters what they think." He glanced at her. "And right now, they think you're his weakness." Above them, the sounds of warfare raged. Gunshots, explosions, screams. Imani sank to the floor, hugging her knees, and realized with horrible clarity that Joon-Seok could die. The man who'd bought her, imprisoned her, but also protected her and seen her as human when he didn't have to. He could die defending a house she was trapped in, protecting a girl he barely knew. And the thought of it made her chest split open. 30 minutes passed like hours. Then the door handle turned. Lee's gun snapped up, finger on the trigger. "Stand down." Joon-Seok's voice, rough and strained. The door opened. He stood there covered in blood, his clothes shredded, a gash across his cheek, his left arm hanging at an odd angle, but alive, still standing. "Status?" Lee asked. "Contained. 8 hostiles down. 3 escaped. Perimeter secured." Joon-Seok's eyes found Imani on the floor. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, unable to speak, staring at all that blood. "Good." He swayed slightly, and Lee caught his good arm. "Get medical up here, and increase security. I want." His words slurred, and Imani realized he was going into shock. "You're bleeding," she said stupidly, scrambling to her feet. "I'm fine." "You're not fine, you're—" She moved toward him, and he flinched back violently. Even injured, even barely conscious, the no-touch rule remained. "Let me help you." "I don't need." His eyes rolled back, and he collapsed. Lee caught him before he hit the ground, yelling into his radio for medical. Imani dropped to her knees beside them, her hands hovering uselessly over Joon-Seok's unconscious form. "Where's he hit?" she demanded. "Shoulder. Ribs. Maybe internal bleeding." Lee was pressing on the shoulder wound, trying to stop the flow. "Where the hell is medical?" Imani grabbed the first aid kit from the wall, her hands shaking but her mind clicking into emergency mode. Years of babysitting, of handling crises in group homes, of learning to function through panic. She tore open gauze packages, pressed them against the worst wounds. "Stay with me," she whispered, not sure if she was talking to Joon-Seok or herself. "Don't you dare die. Not when we just started." She didn't finish the sentence because she didn't know how it ended. Medical staff burst through the door, took over with professional efficiency. They loaded Joon-Seok onto a stretcher, started IVs, barked medical terms Imani didn't understand. She followed them through the house, through rooms she'd never seen, past bodies of men who'd tried to kill them, through blood and destruction. The mansion looked like a war zone. They took him to a medical facility hidden in the basement, a fully equipped emergency room that shouldn't exist in a private home but somehow did. Imani stood outside the door, still covered in his blood, while doctors worked. Miss Kwan appeared at her elbow, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "Come, you should clean up. I need to know if he's okay." The doctors will inform us. Come, child. I'm not leaving. Imani's voice cracked. Not until I know. Miss Kwan studied her with those knowing eyes, then nodded and stayed beside her. They waited in silence, both women who'd been affected by Han Joon-Seok in different ways, both hoping he'd survive. 3 hours later, a doctor emerged, pulling off bloody gloves. He'll live. Multiple gunshot wounds, one through the shoulder, one grazed the ribs. Significant blood loss. Fractured arm. But no vital organs hit. The doctor looked exhausted. He's stable. Unconscious but stable. Imani's knees buckled with relief. Miss Kwan caught her. Can I see him? The words came out before Imani could stop them. The doctor hesitated. He's not awake. I don't care. I just need to see him. Something in her voice must have convinced him. He nodded and led her to a recovery room. Joon-Seok looked smaller somehow, lying in a hospital bed hooked up to machines. His face was clean now, the blood washed away, revealing the bruises and cuts underneath. His chest rose and fell steadily. Alive. Imani approached slowly, like he might bolt even in unconsciousness. She'd never seen him vulnerable before. Not like this, not defenseless. Felt like witnessing something sacred and terrible. She sank into the chair beside his bed and realized her face was wet. You're an idiot, she whispered. Staying behind like that, you could have died. Her voice broke. And I don't know when I started caring if you died. But I do. I hate that I care. I hate that I was terrified something would happen to you. You bought me. You imprisoned me. I should be celebrating that you almost... She couldn't finish. But I'm not. I'm sitting here crying because you're hurt, and I don't know what that makes me. She reached out, her hand hovering over his. The no-touch rule. Even now, even unconscious, she couldn't bring herself to break it. They came for me, she said quietly. Lee said they came because they think I'm your weakness. That taking me would give them leverage. She laughed bitterly. Is that what I am to you? A weakness? Or just an obligation you're stuck with? No answer, just the steady beep of monitors. Imani sat back, pulled the blanket tighter around herself. When you wake up, we need to talk. Really talk. Because I can't keep doing this. Existing in limbo, not knowing if I'm prisoner or guest or something else entirely. I can't keep feeling like this about someone who owns me. She stayed until exhaustion dragged her under, her head dropping onto the edge of his bed, her hand still hovering near his but not touching. She woke to someone stroking her hair. Imani's eyes snapped open. Joon-Seok was awake, his right hand, the uninjured one, gently running through her curls. The moment he realized she was awake, he snatched his hand back like he'd been burned. Sorry, he rasped. You were crying in your sleep. He stopped, seeming confused by his own actions. Imani sat up slowly, her neck protesting from the awkward angle. You're awake. Unfortunately, he tried to shift in bed and winced. How long was I out? About 6 hours. She rubbed her eyes. The doctor said you'll recover fully. You got lucky. Lucky. He laughed, then regretted it as pain flashed across his face. Is that what we're calling it? What would you call almost dying to protect your prisoner? His eyes met hers, and the intensity there stole her breath. You're not my prisoner. Then what am I? The question hung between them, heavy with everything they'd been avoiding. Joon-Seok looked away first. I don't know, he admitted quietly. I thought I did. But somewhere between that first breakfast and now, the lines got blurred. They came for me, Imani said. Your enemies. They thought taking me would hurt you. They were right. The admission shocked them both. Joon-Seok's jaw clenched, like he regretted the words immediately. But he didn't take them back. When did that happen? Imani whispered. When did I become someone you'd die for? I don't know that either. His voice was rough with exhaustion and pain and something else. Maybe when you called me out in the kitchen. Maybe when you kept fighting even when it would have been easier to break. Maybe, he stopped. It doesn't matter. What matters is you're alive and safe. And you almost weren't. That's my job. keeping people safe. He finally looked at her again. Even if they hate me for it. I don't hate you. The words surprised her. I should. God knows I should. But I don't. You should, he agreed. What I did to you, bringing you here, trapping you, it's unforgivable. Probably. Imani's hand moved without permission, settling on the bed beside his. Not touching, but close. But you also gave me my education back. Gave me language and books and small freedoms you didn't have to give. You protected me today. Nearly died protecting me. That has to count for something. Joon-Seok stared at her hand near his. You deserve better than small freedoms. I deserve a choice, she corrected. I deserve to decide what my life looks like. Who's in it. What it means. Then choose. His voice was barely audible. I can't let you leave, not yet. Not while my enemies think you're leverage. But inside these walls, inside this life. He took a shaky breath. Choose how you want this to be. I won't force anything. Won't expect anything. Just choose. Imani looked at this broken man in a hospital bed, covered in bandages and vulnerability, offering her the only thing he could, agency within captivity. It wasn't enough. It wasn't freedom, but it was something. I choose to stay in this room tonight, she said softly. Make sure you don't die in your sleep. Is that okay? Joon-Seok's eyes glistened. You don't have to. I know. That's why it's a choice. She settled back into the chair, still not touching him but present. Rest. I'll be here. He watched her for a long moment, like he was memorizing her face. Then his eyes drifted closed, his breathing evening out into sleep. And Imani sat guard over the man who'd imprisoned her, the man who'd almost died for her, the man she was starting to care for in ways that terrified her. Tomorrow she'd defend her thesis. She'd graduate with honors despite everything. Tomorrow, they'd have to face what this thing between them was becoming. But tonight she just stayed, choosing in her own small way to be there. It was the first real choice she'd made since waking up in this nightmare. And somehow, impossibly, it felt like the first step toward something that might, maybe, eventually resemble freedom. Imani defended her thesis from a laptop in Joon-Seok's recovery room. He'd insisted she use his office, but she refused to leave him alone. So at 9 a.m., dressed in a blazer over pajama pants the camera wouldn't see, she presented 4 years of research to a panel of professors who had no idea she was trapped in a Korean mansion, guarded by armed men, sitting beside a Mafia boss recovering from gunshot wounds. Joon-Seok stayed quiet during her presentation, but she felt his eyes on her the entire time, watching her transform from the defiant girl he'd acquired into the professional woman she'd worked so hard to become. When she finished, her advisor smiled warmly through the screen. Congratulations, Miss Reese. It's unanimous. You've passed with honors. The call ended. Silence filled the room. Then Joon-Seok spoke, his voice rough from disuse. You're brilliant. Imani turned to him, still processing, still trying to believe it was real. I graduated. You did. Her voice broke. For years of sacrifice, of working 3 jobs, of proving everyone who'd written her off wrong. And she'd done it. Even here, even like this. I did it. You did. Something like pride flickered across his face. Despite everything. Despite me. The tears came then. Relief and grief and triumph all tangled together. She covered her face with her hands, shoulders shaking. Imani? Joon-Seok shifted in bed, reaching for her instinctively, then stopping himself. The perpetual barrier. I'm sorry. This should be a celebration. It's not that. She wiped her eyes. I wish my parents could have seen it. I wish Mrs. Patterson hadn't. She stopped. I wish this day looked different. What would it look like? If you could choose. Imani laughed wetly. I don't know. Friends celebrating. My family there. Someone to share it with who actually chose to be in my life. She looked at him. Not this. Joon-Seok's jaw tightened. No, not this. The week that followed was strange. Joon-Seok recovered quickly. Too quickly, his doctors said. but he was stubborn about returning to work. The attack had rattled his organization. He spent hours in meetings, on phone calls, rebuilding security and hunting down whoever had leaked information about Imani. But every evening, he came to the library where she'd started spending her time. Didn't speak much, just worked beside her in companionable silence, while she researched job opportunities she couldn't actually pursue. On the 8th night, he broke the quiet. What would you do if you were free? Imani closed her laptop. Why do you ask questions you don't want the answer to? Because I'm trying to understand what I took from you. He set down his tablet. You graduated. You achieved what you came here to do, what you sacrificed everything for. So what comes next? In the life you should be living. She studied him carefully, searching for the trap. But his face held only genuine curiosity and something that looked like regret. I'd apply to the Department of Children and Families. Start as a caseworker. Make a difference, even if it's just one kid at a time. She paused. I'd get a small apartment. Adopt a cat. Maybe date someone who chose to be with me instead of buying me like furniture. That last part landed like she'd meant it to, sharp and cutting. Joon-Seok flinched. I deserve that, he said quietly. Yeah, you do. Imani leaned forward. So why do you keep me here? Really? Your enemies know about me now. Keeping me close makes me a target. It would be easier to let me go. I told you. Until they're eliminated. That's an excuse. She cut him off. You've eliminated threats before. You'll eliminate these too. But then what? Will you finally let me go? Or will there be another excuse? Another reason I have to stay. Joon-Seok stood abruptly, pacing to the window. His shoulder was still bandaged, his movements stiff. You want the truth? I've been asking for it since day one. The truth is I don't know how to let you go. He kept his back to her. The truth is that for 15 years, I've been dead inside, functioning but not living. And then you woke up in my house, and you were so alive, so angry and defiant and present. You looked at me like I was human instead of a monster. You saw past the blood on my hands to the man drowning underneath. His voice cracked. And for the first time since I lost them, I wanted to be alive again. Imani's heart hammered against her ribs. That's why I can't let you go, he continued. Because you're the only real thing in my life. The only person who doesn't fear me or worship me or want something from me. You just see me. And I'm selfish enough to want to keep that. Even though keeping you means destroying any chance you have at the life you deserve. He turned to face her, and the raw vulnerability in his expression stole her breath. So yes, I'm keeping you prisoner. But not because of threats or business arrangements or any logical reason. He moved closer, each step deliberate. I'm keeping you prisoner because I'm a selfish, broken man who's terrified of being alone in the dark again. And I know that makes me irredeemable. I know that means you should hate me. But I can't. His voice broke completely. I can't be empty again. I can't go back to that. Imani stood, closing the distance until only a foot separated them. Then don't. What? You think I don't understand? Her eyes burned. You think I haven't felt alone my entire life? My parents died. Mrs. Patterson used me. Every foster home before her treated me like a paycheck. I've been surviving on my own since I was 8 years old. And I am so tired of being alone. Her voice shook. So if you want me to stay, if you actually want me, Joon-Seok, not as property or obligation but as a person you choose, then say that. Stop hiding behind excuses and guilt and just be honest. I can't ask that of you. You're not asking. I'm offering. She took a breath. I'm not saying I forgive you. I'm not saying this is healthy or right or anything close to normal. But I'm saying that somewhere between hating you and understanding you, I started caring about you. And I'm tired of pretending I don't. Joon-Seok stared at her like she'd spoken in a language he didn't understand. You shouldn't care about me. Probably not. But I do. She held his gaze. You almost died protecting me. You gave me back pieces of my life when you didn't have to. You see me, really see me, in ways no one else ever has. So maybe this started as imprisonment, but it doesn't have to stay that way. Maybe we can choose what this becomes. How? The word came out desperate. How do we make this anything other than what it is? We start over. Imani stepped back and extended her hand. Hi, my name is Imani Reese. I'm 20 years old. I just graduated with a degree in social work, and I'm trying to figure out what comes next in my life. Joon-Seok looked at her outstretched hand for a long moment. The barrier he'd maintained so rigidly. The line he'd refused to cross. His hand shook as he slowly, carefully, reached out and took hers. The moment their skin touched, he gasped. Like someone had shocked him or like he'd forgotten what human contact felt like. His fingers tightened around hers, and Imani saw tears spill down his face. I'm Han Joon-Seok, he whispered. I'm 39 years old, and I don't know how to be anything other than broken. But I'd like to learn. If you'll teach me. Imani squeezed his hand. Deal. They stood there, hands clasped, both of them crying, both of them terrified and hopeful and so desperately tired of being alone. I need to do something, Joon-Seok said after a moment, before we can really start over. Will you come with me? Curiosity and caution warred in Imani's chest, but she nodded. Okay. He led her through the mansion, out into the gardens she'd only seen through windows. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of jasmine. They walked in silence to a private section she hadn't known existed. A garden within the garden, surrounded by tall hedges. 2 memorial stones stood in the center, illuminated by soft lights. Joon-Seok released her hand and knelt before them. Hygiene. Somin. I want you to meet someone. His voice was thick. This is Imani. She's important. She's helping me remember how to be human again. How to feel something other than grief and guilt. He touched the smaller stone gently. I think you'd like her, Somina. She's strong like you were. Brave. Doesn't take anything from anyone. Tears streamed down Imani's face as she knelt beside him. I'm not replacing you, Joon-Seok continued. I could never replace you. You'll always be my first love, my greatest joy, my deepest regret. But, he took a shaky breath. But I think I'm ready to try living again. Not just existing, actually living. And I needed you to know. Needed your blessing, even though I don't deserve it. Imani placed her hand on his back. The first time she'd deliberately touched him. He didn't flinch, just leaned into the contact like a drowning man grabbing a lifeline. I'm sorry I couldn't meet them, Imani said softly. But thank you for introducing me, for letting me see this part of you. They stayed there for a long time, 2 broken people kneeling before ghosts, giving themselves permission to move forward without forgetting the past. When they finally returned to the house, something fundamental had shifted. The next morning, Joon-Seok called her to his office. Imani entered cautiously, unsure what to expect. He stood behind his desk, and in front of him sat a folder and a small box. I had my lawyers draw up paperwork, he said without preamble. An annulment, completely legal, completely binding. You sign these and our marriage never existed. You'll be free to leave. He gestured to the box. New passport. New identity if you want it. Money enough to start over anywhere in the world. And guaranteed protection from my organization and my enemies. Imani's breath caught. You're letting me go. I'm giving you a choice. Real choice, not the illusion of it. His eyes met hers. What happened to you, what I did to you, was wrong. I can't undo it, but I can give you back your freedom. No strings. No expectations. You can walk out that door right now and never look back. She stared at the folder, at the escape she'd dreamed about for weeks. Freedom. Her life returned. Everything she'd wanted since waking up in this nightmare. And if I don't sign? Her voice was barely audible. Then you stay, but not as my property. Not as an obligation or a prisoner. Joon-Seok moved around the desk, stopping a few feet away. You stay as someone I'm choosing, someone I want in my life. And I become someone you're choosing, not someone you're stuck with. What does that look like? I don't know. He laughed shakily. I've never done this real relationship, real partnership. But we figure it out together. We build something that's ours, not something forced on you. We date. We talk. We take it slow and see where it goes. He paused. But only if you want to. Only if you choose to. Imani picked up the folder, felt the weight of freedom in her hands. She could leave. Start over. Build the life she'd always dreamed of. But that life suddenly felt hollow without the broken man standing in front of her. This is insane, she whispered. Completely. People will say I have Stockholm Syndrome, that I'm trauma-bonded to my captor. Probably. He didn't look away. Would they be wrong? Imani considered it honestly. Maybe partially. But that's not all this is. She set the folder down. You hurt me. You took my freedom, my choices, my life as I knew it. I should hate you. Part of me still does. But another part of me sees you. Sees the man behind the monster, the broken pieces that match mine. And that part wants to see what we could build together. She opened the small box. Inside was a ring. Not the marriage band she'd woken up with, but something different. Simple, elegant, with a single diamond that caught the light. If I stay, she said slowly. If I choose this, it's on my terms. I'm not your wife because of a contract. I'm not your property. I'm Imani Reese, and you're Han Joon-Seok, and we're two people trying to figure out if we can heal together. Whatever terms you want. His voice was raw. Whatever you need. I need time. I need space to be angry sometimes. I need you to understand that forgiveness isn't instant. It's something I'll work toward, but it might take years. She stopped. I need to know that if I ever want to leave, I can. That I'm not trapped. You can leave anytime. The annulment papers stay valid. You want out. Today, next week, next year, you just say the word. He pulled out his phone, showed her something. I've also arranged for a direct line to the U.S. Embassy, and a personal bank account in your name with enough money to disappear if you need to. No access for me, just yours. Imani's eyes widened. You're giving me an escape route. I'm giving you power. Real power, not performative choice. His jaw clenched. I took your freedom. I can't give it back completely, not with my enemies still hunting you, but I can give you the tools to take it if you need them. Because that's what you deserve. She looked at the ring, at the annulment papers, at the man offering her both freedom and partnership in the same breath. Ask me, she said quietly. If you want me to stay, ask me properly. No contracts, no business arrangements. Just you and me. Joon-Seok's hands shook as he took the ring from the box. He didn't kneel, that felt wrong somehow, too performative. Instead, he just stood before her, vulnerable and terrified and hopeful. Imani Reese, will you stay? Will you give me the chance to earn your trust, your forgiveness, maybe someday your love? Not because you have to, but because you choose to. Imani took the ring from his hand and slipped it on her own finger. Not the traditional finger that felt too much like the forced marriage. She put it on her right hand instead, a symbol of choice rather than obligation. I'll stay, she said, but we're doing this my way. We date. We learn each other. We build something real from the broken pieces. And if it doesn't work, if I decide this was a mistake, I walk away with no guilt and you let me go. Deal? Deal. Joon-Seok's smile was tentative, unpracticed, but genuine. So what happens now? Now? Imani glanced at the annulment papers, then back at him. Now you take me on a real date, somewhere outside these walls. Somewhere I choose to be with you, not somewhere I'm forced to stay. His face sobered. It's dangerous. My enemies will always be there. She touched his face gently, and he leaned into it like she was the only solid thing in his world. We can't live in fear forever, Joon-Seok. At some point, we have to choose to live. Really live. So take me somewhere. Show me Seoul through your eyes. Let me choose to be with you in the world, not just in this cage. He covered her hand with his, holding it against his cheek. Okay, tomorrow. I'll take you anywhere you want to go. Promise. Promise. That night, Imani sat in her room, because she wasn't ready to give up that separate space yet, and looked at the ring on her finger. It wasn't perfect. This situation wasn't healthy by any normal standard. But it was hers. Her choice. Her terms. And for the first time since waking up in this mansion, She felt like Imani Reese again. Not a victim, not a prisoner, but a woman choosing her own path forward, even if that path was complicated and messy and unconventional. Her phone buzzed. A text from Joon-Seok, in the room across the hall. Thank you for choosing to stay, for seeing me, for giving me a chance to be better. She typed back, thank you for letting me choose. For the first time in my life, someone powerful gave me agency instead of taking it. Don't make me regret it. I won't. Promise. Imani smiled, set her phone aside, and finally, let herself imagine a future that might not be perfect but could be hers. 3 months later, Imani walked through Bukshin Hanok village with Joon-Seok beside her. Their hands clasped loosely. He'd kept his promise. Taken her all over Seoul, shown her his city, let her fall in love with the place she'd been forced to call home. She still had hard days. Days where the anger surged back and she needed space. Days where she questioned every choice she'd made. But she also had good days. Days where Joon-Seok made her laugh. Days where they talked for hours about everything and nothing. Days where she remembered why she'd chosen to stay. I got a job offer, she said as they watched the sunset over traditional Korean roofs. Joon-Seok's grip tightened slightly. Where? Here. Seoul. An international organization working with displaced children and trafficking victims. She looked at him. Ironic, right? Me working with trafficking victims when you survived it. He turned to face her. You're going to be incredible at that job. Those kids will be lucky to have someone who understands. I'd have to disclose us, our relationship, the circumstances. She bit her lip. Are you okay with that? Are you? He touched her face gently, a gesture he'd slowly learned to accept again. I don't care who knows, but if it makes your life harder, it might. She leaned into his touch. But hiding feels like shame, and I'm not ashamed anymore. This started wrong, but we're making it right. On our terms. Then tell them. He smiled. A real smile that lit up his whole face, that made him look younger than 39. Tell them you're with me because you choose to be, not because you have to be. Tell them we're figuring it out together. Imani pulled him down and kissed him. Still gentle, still careful, both of them learning what intimacy looked like after trauma. When they pulled apart, his eyes were wet. I love you, he whispered. I know I don't have the right to say that. I know it's too soon and too complicated and I love you too, she interrupted. Even though you drive me crazy. Even though we have so much healing left to do. Even though this is the weirdest love story in existence. She grinned. I choose you. Every day. I choose us. Joon-Seok pulled her close, buried his face in her hair, and finally, let himself believe that he deserved this. Deserved her. Deserved a second chance at living. They weren't perfect. Their story wasn't simple or pure or anything close to traditional. But it was theirs. Built from broken pieces. Chosen every single day. And sometimes that was enough. Sometimes that was everything. This is the end of Imani and Joon-Seok's journey. From captivity to choice. From brokenness to healing. If this story grabbed your heart and didn't let go, share it with someone who loves emotional, complicated love stories. Comment below. Would you have stayed? Could you have chosen to love someone who started as your captor? And follow for more stories that'll wreck you in the best way possible. Because love isn't always simple, but it's always worth fighting for.